Hello, welcome back to this ongoing video tutorial series on Arturia's ARP 2600V emulation of this fantastic synthesizer. So last time I said we were going to cover VCO3 today. We'll push on a bit further than that and do the VCF as well. VCO3 is very similar in many respects to 2, so it won't take us long to cover. And basically the only differences between the two are their normal connections. So they both have keyboard control voltage, they both have an ADSR, but in the other respects they differ slightly. So let's cover that off very quickly. Firstly, get to the stage where VCO3 has an active input into the VCF. So here we have a sawtooth wave, so the little picture on the normal connection, VCO3 as a saw coming in. So from that point, we can now start messing with this sound. As things stand at the moment, no matter what key I play on the keyboard, it's going to generate the same tone. So we introduce keyboard control voltage. So what have we got for our normal connections? Well, as I say, we've already had ADSR examples in 1 and 2. And again, this is an FM control. So if we increase this slider, we're going to get pitch change to the sound. It's not normally when you're talking about ADSRs, you're talking about volume, but bear in mind these are FM changes. These are changing the frequency of the tone. Turn that back off. We've dealt with that. Noise will introduce randomness to the sound, to the pitch. You can see it in the spectrum analyzer. And there we've just completely messed with the tone because it's no longer generating a single consistent tone. It's being thrown all over the place, and that translates into noise. Bring that back down. And then these two, we've got a VCO2 is throwing a sine wave in. So if we send VCO2 into low frequency mode, there's the pitch going up and down. And remember, any of these jacks can be overridden at any time with any other input. This is just the default starting position. So if we want to change that into a saw, for instance, there's your sawtooth sound, the sawtooth shape being applied to the pitch of VCO3. Throw that away. Here we have another VCO2 input, but there are two differences here. One, it's a sawtooth input. Two, it's affecting the pulse width of the wave, not the frequency. So no effect. At the moment we're generating a sawtooth wave, aren't we? So if we take the pulse wave out instead and go over here, now there it is. So remember, pulse width modulation only has an effect when you're dealing with a pulse wave. So that's the triangle output from VCO2 is having an effect on the pulse width of VCO3. Slow it right down. So that's just the same as doing this. And that's it. So now we've introduced all the three oscillators and we've seen that fundamentally they're all doing the same thing, they're generating tones. And bear in mind that each of these oscillators is generating all of these tones at all time. We can send the square wave of the VCO to one modulation input. We can send the saw off somewhere else to have some other effect. All of these outputs are active at all times. You've got a hell of a lot of different waves being generated here and capable of going wherever we want, and they are going to be they're going to have two significant roles to play. One, in generating audio tone, and two, as acting as modulation sources for other components in the system. Okay, so that's all straightforward enough. And now that we've introduced ourselves to each of those three oscillators, let's turn them all on at the same time. Okay, not sounding super exciting at the moment. Let's make one of them an octave lower. Oh, this one was at 8, so we weren't really hearing that one. Bring this one up to 4. There you go. So that's 3 separate sounds there, all active at the same time. So let's deal with the VCF. This is the primary filter of the device, and we'll go top down. So most of this stuff is really straightforward. This is your fundamental frequency cutoff. Now at the moment we're in low pass mode, which means this slider at the upper limit, 19.8 kilohertz, it's letting basically all the signal through. As we start moving this slider down, it throws high frequencies away. At the rate of 24 decibels per octave. That's the, if we go back up here again, we can see it on span. The rate at which frequencies are thrown away. If we have 12 dB low pass filter, high pass is the other way, so it's going to let high stuff through and throw low frequencies away. So to hear this effect, we start off at the other end of the spectrum. I've now turned my filter frequency slider all the way down, because as we go up, we're going to be changing the level, the low level frequencies that are being thrown away. Can you see that slider is logarithmic? So we're changing in individual hertz up to tens of hertz for quite a long time, and then we start gradually ramping up. Halfway through the scale, we're at 598 hertz, and then we start accelerating really quickly, and we're jumping thousands of hertz at a time. So that's a logarithmic scale. Our ears are logarithmic, so it makes sense that that effects such as filters are as well, and it has a more linear effect on what we actually perceive. Band pass chooses a range of frequencies to allow to be heard and throws everything on either side away, and this is where our spectrum analyzer is really useful for seeing this stuff. Wasn't a particularly dramatic. I mean, you heard it. That's the band pass flowing through the range. But if I turn my resonance up to accentuate the center frequency and concentrate the change around there, watch what happens now. And every time I stop moving, the graph kind of settles itself down. Okay, and I'll just let it settle down for a moment, and then you can see the peak around which the frequencies are concentrating. And finally, notch, which is the opposite. So this is going to sculpt out like a V-shaped curve. Nice tight V there. So you can see as I'm messing with these controls, so resonance deepens the V, makes it really sharp, whereas when I pull back on that it flattens out and makes the V, the slopes of the V more gentle. And the frequency is the center point of the trough. So that's all pretty standard filtering stuff, and all very lovely it is too. And that's applying to the entire module all of these audio signals that are coming in, and we have 5 default audio signals, the 3 VCOs, ring modulator and the noise generator. You can mix all of those together and throw them out. So before we get on to the control sliders over here, let's have a quick moment to look at the ring mod. So ring modulation is the multiplication, hard word to say, of 2 frequencies. So we're adding 2 sound sources, multiplying 2 sound sources together, not adding, and it results in a lot of dissonance. You end up with quite a metallic sound. So by default we have VCO1's saw output being multiplied together with VCO2's sine wave, and that sounds like kind of harsh sort of sound. And don't forget, we can add that to all of our other oscillators, mix them all together. Okay, and then finally, we've already dealt with the noise generator in a previous tutorial, but it's literally just noise, and here it's noise as a sound source. So our graph is just a mass of frequencies. It's all the frequencies. And as we go head towards pink, we throw those high frequencies away and just end up with the low stuff. So those are your 5 sound sources. Let's go back to the standard oscillator stuff. Oh, look at this. That's detuned a bit. Okay, so now we want to affect the filter frequency dynamically, and by default we have 3 separate controls. So the keyboard control, firstly I'll hit the lowest note on my keyboard, the highest note. Now bring this up, the lowest note, not there, highest note, only the high frequencies. So it's basically taken what would normally be a smooth application of filter sound across the keyboard and it's done this to it. So at the low frequencies we're not actually getting any audible sound. It's a G3. And then the filter really kicks in sharp. I pull back on that, play those same notes. So it's how much you want your filter settings to vary according to whether you play low notes or high notes. This one over here, typical stuff. We know what envelopes do. Kind of effect. Make it more intense. There we go. It really doesn't take long fiddling around with sliders on filters to start getting some great sounds. And then the VCO2 has its sine wave input hardwired in here. So let's go into low frequency mode, because we know that's where we're going to want to start. There we go. So that's a sine wave being applied. You can see the resonance. If I bring this resonance up, you'll see a spike. There we go. Great stuff. All of this is normaled out to the amplifier, which we have turned up. But of course, that's the same as this jack over here. So we can send this VCF signal wherever we want. So in terms of your general introduction to the ARP, we've now got a pretty rich sound which has lots of character and interest to it, and all we've done is mixed 3 oscillators together and brought in a little bit of filter control, and we're good to go. So this is a great foundation now. We've done the hard work, we've done the legwork and built our foundations. So now we understand how the tones are generated, and we've got this idea in our heads of the difference between audible frequencies and low frequency frequencies, and the low frequency stuff is used as modulation sources for other things. So we have this either cyclic or saw based or square effect on another parameter somewhere else in the synth. So that'll do us for this video. And in the next video, we're going to deal with the sample and hold generator. It's one of the components that when we had our very early days, when we were talking about these 2 VCOs over here, the one connection that we didn't talk about was the sample and hold. And so that's a subject entirely in its own right, and we'll deal with that in the next video. So I hope you'll join me then. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you next time.